This is Amalgamations, the Contemporary Jewish Artists Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Klaus. What a treat it is today. I'm here with one of my closest friends in the world, Eliana Rubin. How are you?
I'm great. How are you, Aaron?
I'm so good. Eliana is an actor, a playwright, a singer-songwriter, and a teacher. Eliana and I met at Six Points Creative Arts Academy in the summer of 2018. I actually referenced it in the first episode, but for those of you who didn't have a chance to listen, it is a Jewish arts camp. It is a place where we can be fully Jewish and fully artistically ourselves. Last summer, I taught the instrumental music program. Eliana taught the theater program. This camp embodies this crazy idea that we could have Jewish summer camp and our art in the same space. That for me, at least, I imagine for you as well, that it was a life-affirming and a life-altering experience. Yeah?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Like there are many facets of my life that I categorize from like pre-CAA to post-CAA.
Absolutely. As close as we've gotten over these last few years, I think there's still more for me to learn about you. So could you just take us back to your early memories of engaging with theater and acting in the arts and how those experiences shaped you?
So I have been performing since forever. I was always that kid that would, break out into song or want to, do little shows for my family. The first time that I was ever in a show was when I was 5. I was in a production of The Music Man, and I played Winthrop, who's a character. He's a little boy, he has a little lisp. And I remember being on stage during one of the performances, and I was doing something. I think I misplaced a prop. And so I was looking for it, and I was trying to stay in character as much as a 5-year-old could. And the audience was laughing, and I remember looking out at them, and there's this phrase within the world of the theater, or with actors, I should say, where they say you've been bitten by the bug. And that basically means that you can't do anything else. And for a very long time, that was my life. Theater was my life. I was acting from that point forward, basically. And I, went on auditions for film and TV stuff. I'm from Los Angeles, so it was an easy market, I guess, to be a part of. And I would take acting classes, and it was always this really beautiful hobby that I love to do. In high school, though, that hobby turned into the thing that I wanted to be a part of for the rest of my life. My high school drama teacher was very instrumental in making that happen, just with the shows that he chose. And he put a faith in me that I didn't know that I needed. And from there, I decided that I wanted to go to a drama program for college. And my top choice was NYU. And so I auditioned and I got in. And in 2013, I jumped everything in the middle of the country, and I went from Los Angeles to New York. And something that I like to think is that going to NYU taught me both how to be an artist, be a theater performer, an actor, a playwright, but it also taught me how to be a human. I learned so much about myself through my acting classes that I feel like I just don't know the type of person that I would be if I didn't have the experiences that I have. And I wouldn't trade them for anything, because they shaped me in a lot of ways that I don't know many other programs or experiences could have. And I also just found that one of the things that I love about being a theater artist, and within acting specifically, is getting to step into someone else's shoes and getting to play around with those different life experiences and seeing how my own life experiences intersect with the characters, and how do I bring myself into the character if I'm able to, and getting to play pretend as an adult. I think that there's something so beautiful about adults playing pretend and letting themselves be silly and be messy and try things that make them uncomfortable. Because in a lot of my acting classes, I did a lot of things that that were new to me and that I wasn't as sure about. And I had to take that leap of faith. And sometimes I went splat, and sometimes I flew, and I wouldn't change any of them.
One of the beautiful things about working at CAA, this Creative Arts Academy camp, is getting to find similarities between our arts disciplines. One of the things that you mentioned that resonated most with me was this idea of theater shaping who you are and shaping your life and teaching you so many life lessons. I found that so much to be the case with music. Now, I know that we've talked about your theater aspect of who you are. I know your mom is a cantor. You were active with your youth group growing up. With you were involved with NIFTY, North American Federation of Temple Youth. Could you share more about how and why you chose to engage with Judaism growing up?
Growing up, Judaism was always a part of my life without me, deciding if it was a part of my life. And I don't think that that's a good thing or a bad thing. It was just, part of my experience. I found a lot of joy getting to go to religious school every week. It's where I made some of my closest friends. A couple of my best friends and I have known each other since we were 2 from preschool, and we're still in touch today. I love the fact that my Judaism has fostered these senses of community. And in high school, when I was a part of NIFTY, that was where I really learned how to take responsibility for a lot of things that I had not really considered before, in the sense of like planning events and having to have professional interpersonal relationships. And I think that it was a really great starting point for me to learn how to be a leader in many aspects in a safe environment. And I also just really loved the direct intermixing between the friendships that I made and the Judaism. Because, the Judaism was one of the things that connected all of us. And whether that was in NIFTY or at my synagogue, I just found that we all loved being Jewish in one way or another. And that's one of the things that I love about being a Reformed Jew, is that there are so many ways to interpret it, and to like take this spice off the shelf, but leave this one on, and figure out what Judaism means to each person individually, that then come together in this beautiful thing.
So you've described this identity forming process as a Jewish person, this identity forming process as an artist, as an actor. Were these processes parallel, or were there ever any points when your Jewish identity and your identity as an artist felt in conflict?
Yeah, they were in conflict for a while, specifically from like junior and senior year of high school through all of college. When I was in high school and I was in my shows, I would have to miss some rehearsals because I had to go to a youth group event, or I had to go to a service or a B'nai Mitzvah. When I was in college, I basically put my Judaism on the back burner because it had been such an integral part of my life from birth until I was the age of 18. When I went off to college, I decided that I wanted to live my life the way that I wanted to live it, not have anyone make decisions for me. So, I cherished all of those experiences within NIFTY and within my synagogue and within my Judaism, and I just threw myself into my art. I did still go to high holiday services and celebrate the holidays, and I was a part of a Jewish a cappella group in college, which was really cool. I was in a mentality of, if I really want to make it as an artist, that's the only thing that I can devote my time to. And so I was very conscious about getting cast in a show that happens over a holiday, as an example, and choosing to go do that show instead of celebrating that holiday. Because in my mind, this show only happens once, but I can celebrate this holiday next year. And as I've gotten older, I've, just reevaluated my priorities. And I don't know if I would make that same decision now, just because I love theater, I love art, and I love being Jewish. And it's figuring out how those two things meld with one another.
One of the blessings of you coming into my life when you did was I've gotten to know you as you've really found ways to do that, to bring things together. And I'm inspired by that because, again, I'm on a similar path, I feel, to you, where I'm looking for ways to bring my music and my Judaism together because I can't live without one or the other. When you're teaching, what does bringing together theater and Judaism look like?
CAA was the first place where I really thought about how I merge these two worlds, and how it wasn't living alongside each other, but living with one another. That was the place where I rediscovered my love for Judaism. And I very vividly remember like our first Shabbat together, where each of the different arts disciplines was assigned a prayer. And I remember deciding to write a short musical number based around the Torah portion called a Jewiscal. And I remember feeling so electrified by diving into this Torah portion and exploring the theatrical components of the Torah. And it kind of showed me a new side of Judaism that I hadn't really considered. Because up until this point, Judaism to me was, a community and going and saying prayers together and not necessarily always knowing what those prayers mean, but everyone else is doing it, so I may as well too. And let's light the Shabbat candles and let's go celebrate the holidays. And at Creative Arts Academy, it turned into this brain universe. And I think by that, what I mean is like, there were so many things that I had never considered about Judaism that suddenly were just like, I couldn't get enough. And I didn't know where to like look at first because everything was so intriguing. And so when it came to teaching and when it came to these Jewiscals, I became enamored with learning as much as I could about Judaism and how that ties into theater. And for the first time in both my theatrical and my Jewish life, I didn't feel like I had to choose. I felt like that, if anything, there wasn't any other option besides combining them.
Hmm.
And that combination created this new love for Judaism for myself within this world of text study and within this world of really understanding what happens in these Torah portions.
Could you share more specifically, what is a Jewical, and how did this idea get generated?
At camp, when each arts discipline was assigned a part of the service, and theater got the Torah portion and basically the drash, I suppose, I was very nervous about creating this piece of art because I had never done something like this. And, there was a lot of external anxiety of like, I want to make sure that I'm doing this Torah portion justice, and I want to make sure that I'm impressing people, and I want to make sure X, Y, Z. And eventually I just kind of had to siphon down and be like, okay, well, let's look at the text. Let's see what it says. Let's figure out how to turn that into a musical number. So I sat down with the text, and there was something that just like kind of clicked, and the words started to flow very easily, much more easily than some musical theater things that I've written in the past have. So the way that I go about it is I see what the Torah portion is, and then I like to cross-reference between a couple of different sources, like Chabad, like My Jewish Learning, like just a physical copy of the text, because the way that they're interpreted is slightly different in each of the places. And so as the writer of these pieces, I get to choose what interpretation I want to take. And sometimes I'm in conversation with a clergy person or a Jewish scholar to get their take on what this text means. I like to make sure that I am staying true to the story when it calls for it. Sometimes I've written interpretations. So like, for example, in the portion of Balak, there is a king named Balak who asks a man by the name of Balaam to go and curse all the Jews. And he's sitting on this donkey, and the donkey is trotting along, and then the donkey is stopped by an angel that only the donkey can see, but Balaam cannot. And then the angel shows the angel's self to Balaam and tells Balaam, you can't curse them, you should bless them instead. And then Balaam goes and does that, and Balak's very angry, and then Balak dies. And so like in the first year of camp, I was very true to the story. That was in 2018. In 2019, I wrote another Jewiscal on the same Torah portion. And so then the question becomes, okay, well, how do I interpret this? How do I make this fresh? And so for some reason, my brain decided to tell it from the perspective of the donkey, which then means that for me as a writer, I have to decide what this donkey is feeling. And then I give that to the campers, who are the actors, who then have to interpret my text to fit their version of what the donkey is, or what the guards are, or who Balaam is. And that goes into a really beautiful part of the Jewiscal process, which is working with these campers, which are anywhere from grades 4 to 11, rising 4th through 11th graders. And getting to watch all of them work together is mind-blowing, because you have these kids. Some of them have been in theater forever. Some of them, this is their first time on stage. Some of them have never spoken to one another. And we all come together to make this piece of art. And no matter what happens, it's always good because they're putting their heart and souls into it. My goal when I write them is, one, to make sure that it's understandable for the campers, because, at the end of the day, I want to make sure that they know what's happening in the Torah portion. It's still Jewish education. And number two, there's something meaty within that about the artist within them, getting to really sink their teeth into different characters or into setting or with choreography or with harmonies, getting to give them that juxtaposed theatrical experience alongside the Jewish education.
Well, it's interesting, and I've been very lucky to have seen most of the musicals you've written. I'm thinking about the idea of the word Jewsical. It sounds kind of silly, right? Especially when you first hear about it. It sounds like it would be like a gimmick, a parody, right? Like just from the name itself. I think about the amazing bluegrass duo of Nefesh Mountain. They refer to themselves as Jewgrass, which also sounds sort of gimmicky. And you listen to their music, and you're like, this is real. This is good. This is legitimate. This is heartfelt. This is honest. And I think the same can be said for the Jewsicals. It could be just like, look how cute, all of these young kids being these biblical characters, but there's a real and honest element to them. And you're using the tools of theater to connect with these stories and to connect with these campers and to connect with Judaism and to dive deep into them. I think that's a really beautiful thing.
Yeah, thanks. I think so too. The pre-existing text of the Torah portion itself is already like that's given to me. That's what I have to work with. And in some Torah portions like Balak, you have a donkey that suddenly talks, and that's very silly, right? In other portions, like the portion of Hukat, you see Moses' siblings, Miriam and Aaron, die. And also Moses being told by God that Moses is not allowed to enter the Holy Land because he did not follow God's command. And, when we did that Jewiscal, I thought a little bit about like, is this material too dark? And then I thought, well, this is what the Torah portion's about. So let's see what happens if we dive into this world.
I remember seeing that Juicycle, and I was emotional. I was it was incredible. I had to take a step back for a second and say, here I am at Jewish summer camp watching a musical about the Torah, and I'm like almost crying. Like it was this amazing, beautiful thing. But I think it's again speaks to this idea that you're using these tools that you have, these artistic tools that you have to connect and to dive deep. I think it's just so wonderful. So if you're up for it, could you share a little bit of a musical? Would you be able to play some for us right now?
Yeah, sure. So the first one that I'll share is a little bit of from the portion Balak, what we were talking about. So this is the one where Balaam is told to curse the people of Israel from the king Balak, who is the king of Moab, and then the donkey speaks from the angel. So within the portion of Balak, Balak, the king of Moab, tells Balaam to come and curse all of the Israelites, the Jewish people. And when I was writing this Jewiscal, I was thinking like, okay, well, who is Balak? And for some reason, in this Jewiscal, Balak is not the brightest, I suppose. So this is what Balak says when Balaam comes. I brought you here to bring down the Jewish people. I brought you here to curse them all. I brought you here so that you can do my bidding. I brought you here so that you can smack them. Okay. Then Balaam says, okay, I and he's trying to curse the Israelites, and he can't. And so Balak says, just say curse. It's not a difficult word to say. I need you to curse all the Jews. Smite them. And then instead what comes out of Balaam's mouth is this. Ma tovu aleha Yaakov. This is where we get the prayer Ma tovu from. So then Balak says, I know I am not that smart, but that does not sound like a curse. Balaam tries again. Ma tovu aleha Yaakov. Balak. No, this is not what I had in mind. I need you to curse all of the Jewish people, or else I will get very mad. You won't like me when I get mad. And then Balaam says this. Balak, king of Moab, you brought me here to curse the Israelites, but I'm here now. And I'm starting to understand what that is. Balak, king of Moab, the Israelites will come back with a vengeance. Be wary, because you don't stand a chance now. So goodbye. Something like that. And it's just so silly,
I love how you integrated Jeff Klepper's famous Ma Tovu melody as well. So that was great.
The other one that I'll play for you is from the portion of Korach. In this portion, there is a man by the name of Korach who has decided that he's had enough with Moses and with God, and he's gonna get his own people together. And Moses is like, dude, you shouldn't do that. God's gonna be really mad at you. And Korach's like, I don't care. I'm gonna be the leader now. Go home, Moses. I'm in charge. And so then God tells everyone to come together the next day. So everyone comes together the next day, and God says to Korach and his followers, all right, everyone come together. And then they all do. And then God opens up a hole in the ground and literally swallows them along with the entire town. Like it's gone. It's all gone. So in this Jewiscical, this one is more of an adaptation. So whereas the Balak one that I just played is a more faithful retelling, this one is an adaptation. I wrote it from the perspective of two people that have a very close relationship falling down. They were on Korach's side, and they're falling down, and they're trying to search for each other in the darkness, and they're regretting all of their decisions of deciding to join Korach. So this is that one. I've been falling for what feels like hours, or maybe a couple of days. I thought that I was in the right camp. I thought that I could be saved. I think about what Korach promised, and I wish I could forget a better life for us together, where we could live without regret. Riches don't mean anything to me now, but I wish I could find my way to you. I wish there was light for me to see now. My heart aches for one last glimpse of you. And this is the other person speaking. I've been falling for what feels like seconds. I don't know when it will end. I wish you were here beside me. I wish I had my best friend. I can't believe I was so stupid. I turned my back on Adonai. Everything happened so quickly, I couldn't even say goodbye. Riches don't mean anything to me now, but I wish I could find my way to you. I wish there was light for me to see now. My heart aches for one last glimpse of you. This is both of them. Where did you go? Where are you now? This drop is endless. Please hear my shout. Person one. I hope that you know I'm sorry for cutting our story short. You're my milk and honey. You're my source of warmth. Person two. I wonder if I spread my arms out, if that will slow me down. Maybe you're right above me. Hopefully not down and out. And then both of them. Riches don't mean anything to me now, but I wish I could find my way to you. I wish there was light for me to see now. My heart aches for one last glimpse of you. Hey, is that you? You sound so close. Is that your hair? let go. One of the things that I love about writing these musicals and about writing musical theater is that even with these pre-existing stories, getting to think about where the stories go off the page is something that I'm really intrigued by, especially in musicals. Like the Torah is just a big book of stories, and it's up to us as the artists to interpret it over and over and over again, or just as scholars or as educators.
You're finding such an amazing way to have Torah enrich our lives. And isn't that what we're all trying to do?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, absolutely. I think that, like when I teach in the day schools or in the religious schools that I teach at, how do I make these stories and these, this history and these holidays and these artifacts, like how do I make them enjoyable for the kids to learn about? Is something that I think about a lot. So yeah, I totally get that.
So, where are you hoping to take these musicals?
I have written musicals for some of the synagogues that I've worked at. I've been an artist at residence at a synagogue in Florida. There's a thought that goes through my brain every so often, and that thought is to write a musical a week for every single portion, and then find a way to edit that together to make Torah the musical. I don't know. It's like it's a passion project that requires a lot of learning on my part. And I'm attending Hebrew Union College's Los Angeles campus this fall to pursue my master's in educational leadership. And so I feel like that would be a great way for me to continue to learn about my own Jewish education and about the Torah and the way that it can be interpreted and how to translate different texts. But I just love writing them.
So, how has the process of creating musicals impacted your Jewish identity?
It's helped me to see different facets of Judaism in a lot of new ways. So, like in the portion of Chukat, when Moses loses both of his siblings, like I had no idea that happened. That was never something that was taught to me explicitly. Something that writing musicals has helped me within my Judaism was just like to see how human these people are in these stories. Because we hear about the story of Moses and Miriam parting and crossing the Red Seas and leading the Israelites out of Egypt, and we hear the story of Joseph going to Egypt as a slave and eventually becoming Pharaoh's right hand person, or of Noah building a giant ark and saving the human species. And something that I was never taught was like, how do you think these people felt about that?
Mm,
What do you think it was like to have God tell you, like, you are the sole person that is responsible for the sake of humanity? Build an ark, put your family on it, take some animals on it, and then I'm going to flood the earth. You know, like that is so much for one person to handle.
yeah.
And so I think that writing these musicals helps me to get a better understanding of how art imitates life and vice versa. And like how do we connect to the stories that we tell? Like what you were saying earlier about how some musicals make people feel things, and that's what I think art should do. I think that art is a vehicle for people to get in touch with certain aspects of themselves. Some of them are much more pleasant than others, and some of them are a little bit uncomfortable. And there is nothing wrong with learning more about yourself through art. And so that's one of the main reasons why I love to write musicals is because I feel like that within these grandiose stories, there's something so inherently simple and human about them as well.
As you mentioned, in the fall, you're moving back to your hometown of Los Angeles to start a master's program at Hebrew Union College. Can you talk about what that program is and how you're hoping to use your time there as a springboard to explore Jewish education and theater?
So the program is a master's in educational leadership. And this is the first year that the program is happening. They've completely revamped it, which is super exciting. It's going to be learning in the classroom alongside a residency that each of the incoming students are placed in. So there's lectures and there's conversations and there's writing papers, and then there's also the real world application of going to work at a synagogue or an organization or something, and getting to work with kids and getting to work alongside clergy people and work in education departments. And I want to use it as a way to better learn how to be a Jewish educator. My background is in theater, and so I feel like I have an okay grasp on that, and I want to learn more about how my education relates to Judaism. One day I would love to teach in or run a theater program in a Jewish high school or something. Or like if Creative Arts Academy somehow becomes a year-round program. I don't know. That'd be pretty cool. And, you know, help kids find the sheer awesomeness within the storytelling of Judaism. Because, you know, we have so many plays and musicals to look at and to research. How does that work alongside these age-old biblical texts? How do we do character studies on Moses, on Aaron, on Miriam, taking these texts that have been studied for millennia and applying it to like a child's first time on stage? I just think that there's something really cool about that.
So you're an actor, a singer, songwriter, a Jewish educator, and a playwright. Who are you? What is your identity?
Gosh, I think about this question a lot, just based off of where I am in life and the person that I have and the person that I'm becoming. My identity changes day to day. You know, there are core parts of my identity that I think are very prevalent in many facets of my life. I'm an artist, I'm an educator, I'm a queer person, I'm trans, I'm Jewish, I love summertime. My favorite food is movie theater popcorn. And something that I have learned and am learning to be okay with is the fact that there are parts of my identity that are changing. And there are parts of my identity that I don't know yet. And there are parts of my identity that have rung true that don't ring true anymore. And within those parts, I have to look at them and I have to thank them and I have to honor them and then I let them go. Humans are too complex to be able to know every facet of their identities. And I think that it can be really uncomfortable to sit with that. Like, I know a lot of parts of myself. And there are parts that I love and there are parts that, you know, I'm working on. And when anything in my life changes, like that's going to change something within me, big or small. And nothing about that is wrong. Like part of the fun is the fact that we live in an open world as opposed to like a storyline. And so like I think that I am a person who loves art and loves my queerness and loves being Jewish and is very curious to see what else is going to come in my life.
I think that it's fundamental to our nature to want to know and to be able to recognize that you can't know certain things or you won't know. I think that's very wise of you.
Thanks. Yeah, and like, you know, it's so hard to not know everything. I'm the type of person that likes to know things about myself. And so when there are facets about me that I'm unsure of, sometimes my brain goes into this mentality of like, everything about you is incorrect. You have no idea who you are. You need to just press the reset button. And then I have to pause that mentality and say, well, Eliana, you know a lot about yourself. This one thing that you might be a little unsure of that might bleed into some other facets of your life, that doesn't take priority over the things that you do know. They live alongside each other. And sometimes that is an uncomfortable moment. And it's my job to figure out how to work past that.
What would you want someone listening to this to take away from our conversation?
Oof. Explore yourself in ways that you wouldn't normally consider. When I came into Creative Arts Academy and really started to blend my love of Judaism and theater, that wasn't something that I had expected as much as it happened. Let yourself be okay with not knowing things. If there's something that you want to try and you haven't tried it yet because you're worried about failing, that's okay. I fail all the time. And it doesn't mean that I'm bad. It just means that I haven't tried something enough, or I have tried something and then I don't like it and so I move on, or I try something and I end up really loving it and then I keep going. Yeah, I think that's it.
Eliana, thank you so much. Anytime I have a chance to sit down and chat with you is a real treat. But to really dive in like this has just been so wonderful, and so thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron.
If you'd like to learn more about Eliana, visit elianashirarubin.com, ElianaShirarubin.com. You can also follow her on Instagram at Eliana Shira Rubin or on YouTube. Thanks so much for listening. Our theme song is F Minor Klezmer by the __ Orchestra from their album Fancy Cocktails and Hot Sauce. Check them out at the_orchestra.com. That's orchestra with a K, ORKESTRA. I'm your host, Aaron Klaus, and this has been Amalgamations, the Contemporary Jewish Artists Podcast.